Wider, wider. Locks hum, keys vanish. Someone blinked. Power moved. Strings twitch. Hands unseen. Truth naps. Lies jog. Numbers whisper. Names dissolve. Order giggles. Chaos studies. They trained you quietly. Tests everywhere. Grades invisible. Pass. You obey. Fail. You vanish. Clubs meet. Doors breathe. Angels audit. Monsters graduate. You felt it. That itch. A variable they missed. Control. Cracks. Secret sweat. Watch closely. I'm laughing. They never called it a classroom. That would have been honest. No desks. No bells. No rules posted on a wall. Because walls make people suspicious. Instead, the lessons floated. In jokes. In warnings disguised as advice. In the long pause after you asked the wrong question. You learned fast. Faster than you realize. Not facts. Not truth. Timing. Tone. Permission. This classroom rewarded stillness. Sit quietly inside the acceptable range. Think, but not too far. Speak, but not too loud. Curiosity was allowed, as long as it never arrived early or stayed late. The smartest students learned to predict the teacher's mood before the lesson even began. Grades weren't numbers. They were access. Who got invited, who got promoted, who got ignored until they disappeared. Failure wasn't marked in red. It was marked in silence. Messages unanswered. Opportunities evaporated. Faces that suddenly forgot your name. No appeal process. No feedback form. Just absence. And here's the elegant cruelty. You chose to participate. Every day. Because the classroom felt safe, familiar, structured. It promised a future. Clean, labeled, approved. You didn't notice the test because everyone around you was studying the same invisible guidebook. The curriculum changed constantly. Yesterday's correct answer became today's offense. The best students adapted without complaint. They called it growth. They called it being realistic. They called it how the world works. But listen closely. Real education expands your options. This one narrowed them. Every conversation became a quiz. Every silence, a scan. They weren't testing intelligence. They were testing alignment. How quickly you adjusted. How smoothly you complied. How well you pretended not to notice contradictions stacked like furniture against the exits. And the first rule, oh, the golden rule, was never to name the classroom. Because the moment you say this feels like a test, the illusion trembles, mystery leaks, authority stutters. So most people laughed it off. Don't overthink, relax, that's just how it is. Perfect students, perfect silence. But somewhere between lesson and habit, something shifted. A flicker, a misfit thought, a question that refused to sit down. And that's when the classroom noticed you back. Class wasn't over. It had just begun. The moment you sense it, the room changes. Not louder, tighter. That's how hidden tests work. They don't announce themselves. They observe. They wait for stress, fear, urgency. Then they press play. Suddenly, everything demands a reaction. Now. Pick a side. Speak up. Stay quiet. Share this. Condemn that. Funny thing about real tests, they measure behavior, not beliefs. These exams weren't designed to see what you think. They were built to see how fast you surrender thinking. Will you echo the approved phrase? Will you attack the designated villain? Will you self-correct before anyone corrects you? Every reaction becomes data. Every pause a metric. They call it public opinion. They call it safety. They call it responsibility. But urgency is the tell. Truth never panics. Control does. Hidden tests arrive dressed as crises, moral alarms blaring, artificial deadlines stapled to emotions. There's no time to reflect, they say. Silence is violence. Neutrality is guilt. That's not ethics. That's multiple choice coercion. And here's the deeper joke. You're graded whether you answer or not. Silence is filed. Speech is dissected. Tone matters more than logic. Alignment matters more than accuracy. You're not proving intelligence. You're proving predictability. They adore paradox. They reward free thinkers who all think the same. They celebrate diversity of faces, not diversity of thought. They sell rebellion pre-approved, neatly packaged, safely sponsored. The angels of the system smile while administering the test. Calm voices, soft language. We're just asking questions, they say, already knowing which answers pass. Monsters are displayed on cue to spike fear. Fear shortens thinking. Short thinking increases compliance. But tests leak, they always do. Contradictions surface. Rules apply selectively, exceptions multiply. You notice who's forgiven instantly and who's never allowed to recover. You notice how outrage turns on and off like a switch. You notice how yesterday's sin becomes today's policy. That's when revelation begins, not explosive, not dramatic, quiet, surgical. You stop reacting, you start watching, and that's the dangerous part. Because the hidden test was never about truth. It was about control under pressure. And the second you stop panicking, the test starts failing. Not you, the system. And somewhere behind the curtain, the graders adjust their clipboards, realizing you're no longer answering the questions they prepared. You're asking new ones. Once you stop reacting, you start noticing patterns. Patterns always lead to doors, not public ones, private doors. Every system has clubs. The loud kind are distractions, logos, memberships, hashtags, uniforms. The real clubs don't advertise, they don't recruit loudly. They filter. Confusion is a disqualifier. Calm curiosity is a signal. The velvet rope isn't outside, it's internal. You don't find these clubs by knocking. You find them when information reaches you early, when warnings arrive before consequences, when someone leans in and says, off the record like it's a blessing. They call it trust. They call it responsibility. They call it being in the room. Initiation doesn't involve oaths, it involves silence. What you don't repeat matters more than what you say. You learn which questions are welcomed and which ones politely end conversations. You learn the language of nods, of half smiles, of emails that say nothing but mean everything. Favors become currency. Access becomes oxygen. The club protects its own. Rules bend softly for members. Mistakes are reframed as misunderstandings. Accountability dissolves into committees and timelines. Angels wear credentials. Monsters are outsourced. Contractors, scapegoats, bad actors removed to preserve the image. And here's the critical lesson. The club doesn't fear outsiders. Outsiders are predictable. The club fears graduates, people who understand the system but don't need it, people who could join but choose not to. Those are unstable assets. They can't be motivated by access or threatened by exclusion. So the club tightens narratives, elevates loyalty as virtue, rebrands obedience as maturity. Anyone who steps away is labeled naive, bitter, or dangerous. Leaving must look like failure, or no one would stay. But initiation reveals something else. The club isn't powerful because it's smart. It's powerful because it's coordinated. Take away belief and it becomes paperwork. That's when you realize this wasn't an invitation. It was a test. Join, and you're manageable. Decline, and you unpredictable. And unpredictability is the only thing the velvet rope can't control. So you step back, not angry, not loud, just awake. And somewhere inside the club, a quiet note is added next to your name. Observes. Doesn't submit. Every system needs characters, not people, symbols. Angels to trust, monsters to fear. This keeps the story simple, clean, manageable. When angels speak, thinking stops. When monsters appear, questions disappear. Emotion replaces analysis. Reflex replaces reason. Angels are chosen carefully. Soft voices, polished language, credentials stacked like armor. They don't command. You invite them to decide for you. Experts say. Authorities recommend. Comforting phrases that quietly relocate your judgment. Monsters are even more useful. They absorb complexity. Blame collapses into a face, a group, a label. Once a monster is named, nuance becomes suspicious. Anyone who asks why sounds like they're defending it. But then the mirror arrives. Not loudly, not dramatically. It asks one question, who benefits? And the reflection stings. You see that angels enforce consequences without touching the mess. You see that monsters are often created after the policy, not before it. You see how stories are edited, what's emphasized, what's omitted, what's looped until it feels inevitable. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Systems don't run on villains, they run on volunteers, ordinary people following procedure, people outsourcing conscience to process, people saying, "I'm just doing my job," as if that sentence washes blood from hands. That's the psychological shift. You stop auditioning to be an angel. You refuse the monster costume. You choose the mirror. And mirrors don't flatter. They show participation, silence that enabled, convenience that compromised, fear that complied. This isn't guilt, it's clarity. The kind that burns and heals at the same time. Once you accept this, manipulation loses leverage. Praise doesn't inflate you. Accusations don't own you. You no longer need to be seen as good by a system that profits from obedience. The angels can't bless you because you're no longer asking. The monsters can't scare you because you're no longer projecting. You become difficult to categorize, calm under provocation, thoughtful under pressure. That's terrifying to a system built on reflexes. The mirror doesn't tell you what to do, it tells you what not to be. And when enough people stop playing assigned roles, the story fractures, scripts stutter. Moral theater collapses into awkward silence. That's the moment control weakens, not with riots or revolutions, but with individuals who see clearly and refuse to perform. The mirror smiles back, not because you're right, but because you're free enough to think. Every system survives on assumptions, stable ones. People will react the same way. Fear will always work. Rewards will always motivate. That's the math. Clean, elegant, deadly. You are one of the cons. Tense, profiled, predicted, slotted into behavior ranges like a file in a cabinet. Demographics, preferences, pressure points. The system didn't need to know you, just the version of you that panics on cue, until something broke the equation. The missed variable isn't rebellion. Rebellion is expected, monetized, redirected. Rebels still orbit the system, they just shout while doing it. The missed variable is self-directed meaning. When a person stops outsourcing values, control loses friction. Incentives misfire. Threats fall flat. Shame evaporates. You can't bribe someone who knows what they're building. That's when power moves, not upward, not outward, inward. You stop waiting for permission. Stop chasing validation. Stop reacting to every manufactured emergency. Attention becomes selective. Energy becomes guarded. Silence becomes strategic. This is catastrophic for systems built on engagement. No clicks, no outrage, no predictable loops. The algorithms starve. The narratives repeat louder, thinner, desperate. Watch closely. This is when the noise spikes. More alerts, more labels, more final warnings. Urgency is the last tool of failing control. If it really were inevitable, they wouldn't need to rush you. The variable doesn't announce itself. It doesn't organize marches or write manifestos. It builds parallel paths, skills, communities, income, meaning that don't require permission to exist. Exit is scarier than attack because exits can't be punished publicly. They just drain power quietly, invisibly, until the center feels hollow. You feel the shift in your body first. Less anxiety, less compulsion, a calm that isn't numbness, it's alignment. You're not winning, you're withdrawing. And that's the power shift they never modeled, because the equation assumed you needed them. It never considered the possibility that one day you'd stop asking. And when enough people do that, the system doesn't collapse. It simply stops being in charge. This is the moment they feel it slipping. Not power, belief. Control can survive resistance. It can't survive recognition. The second the mechanism becomes visible, fear loses its grip. Strings don't work once you see the hands. So the system reaches for its oldest trick, caricature. You're extreme, you're irresponsible, you're dangerous. Labels fly fast because they have to. Labels are fences built from words. If they can define you, they can contain you. If they can make you sound unhinged, no one listens long enough to hear your calm. But something strange happens. The wires hum, the signals lag, narratives repeat. Too cleanly, too loudly, like a joke explained 3 times. Outrage feels recycled. Villains look suspiciously convenient. The performance strains under its own weight. And then, laughter, not mockery, not cruelty, recognition. That's the Joker's laugh. Not chaos for chaos's sake, but the sudden, uncontrollable humor of realizing the secret was never powerful. It was just unquestioned. The global illusion needed constant participation. Headlines, shares, fear clicks, moral theater. It needed everyone to believe the script was reality. But belief got tired. You see the timing, you see the incentives, you see the edits. The wires are still there. Screens still glow, orders still circulate. But the current is weaker. The spell is broken. People comply slower, question longer, opt out quietly. This is the climax they never planned for. No riot, no overthrow, no villain speech, just millions of micro-withdrawals. Attention pulled back, trust rerouted, authority met with calm curiosity instead of reflexive obedience. The system shouts to compensate. Volume replaces substance. Threats replace arguments. Emergency replaces evidence. And the laughter spreads, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. The secret wasn't dangerous because it was strong. It was dangerous because it was fragile. It only worked while everyone pretended not to notice. Now the wires buzz awkwardly. The puppets twitch. The audience shifts in their seats. And somewhere in the control room, Nay whispers the one sentence they never wanted to say. Why aren't they afraid anymore? Graduation is silent. No applause, no permission, no final nod from authority. It happens the morning you stop checking for signals before thinking, when attention becomes intentional and fear stops driving decisions. You don't destroy the system, you outgrow it. You keep the useful lessons, discard the conditioning. Noise fades. Urgency loses its grip. You build instead of react. Graduates don't preach, they move differently. Calm under pressure, selective with trust. Focused on what compounds. The classroom doesn't close. You simply walk out, awake, responsible, and finally in control.